Welcome to Believe in the Word with Pastor Dan Shunk. This program is an outpouring of the ministry going on at Calvary Chapel Chambersburg in Chambersburg, Pennsylvania. Here's what's coming up in today's message.
People are desperate, and God's like, I'm going to restore, I'm going to bless, I'm going to bring weddings again. It's just coming and coming, and they're like, there's some people that are like, God, is this the time for this? Is this really the time you want to tell me about all this good stuff? Because we got a problem out there. And he's just going over this amazingness of, he's going to bring the Messiah.
Today on Believe in the Word with Pastor Dan Shunk, we close Jeremiah chapter 33 with one of the clearest prophecies of the coming Messiah, the righteous branch from David's line who will reign forever. God assures his people that just as day follows night, his covenant promises will never fail. Pastor Dan shows how this passage points directly to Jesus Christ, our everlasting King, who fulfills every promise of restoration, righteousness, and peace. Let's join Pastor Dan in Jeremiah chapter 33 as he concludes his message, Hope of Israel's Rebirth, Part 2.
The idea is you have no way of even knowing to ask the question. That's the kind of word, right? It's like you're trying to teach your 5-year-old about, like something they've never, like a submarine, and you're like, we're going to go in a submarine. And they're like, what's a submarine? Well, we're going to get in this box. We're going to go down to the bottom of the ocean. We're going to see things you've never seen. And every step of the way, you're like blowing their mind. Like they've never heard of any of the things you're describing. What's a submarine? What are these fish you're talking about? And these different creatures all of it is just like, I wouldn't have even known to ask. That's the idea of what God is saying. When you come to me, I'm going to tell you things that you wouldn't have even known to ask me. There's so much more out there in this world. And we don't even know the questions. Remember in the New Testament, it said this way. It says, Paul quotes actually from another place where it says, eye has not seen, nor ear has heard, nor has even entered into the heart of man the things that God has prepared for him. And if you don't know God, you're like, oh, that's scary. I don't know what's going to come. What's going to happen? But when you come to know God, you're like, oh man, that sounds exciting. Let's do it. What's he going to show me? Right? And you're like, you should get excited the more you know God. I'm going to show you great and inaccessible things you don't even have access to know about, let alone do or be a part of. You don't even know to ask the question. Oh, in fact, I have that verse right here. I just quoted from 1 Corinthians chapter 2. And actually, Paul is quoting that to the Corinthians from Isaiah chapter 64. And so, the Lord has the ability to do things that we don't even know how to ask the question. Let's continue in verse 4. And so, that's his setup for this chapter. I'm going to tell you things now that are amazing. Now, verse 4, he says, For thus says Yahweh, the God of Israel, concerning the houses of this city, and concerning the houses of the kings of Judah, which are torn down to make a defense against the siege ramps and against the sword, while they are coming to fight with the Chaldeans, and to fill them with the corpse of men whom I have struck down in my anger and in my wrath, and I have hidden my face from this city because of all their evil. Well, behold, in verse 6, I will bring to it health and healing, and I will heal them, and I will reveal to them an abundance of peace and truth. I will return the fortunes of Judah and the fortunes of Israel. Notice it's both. It's the whole house of Israel, Judah and Israel. And I will rebuild them as they were at the first. In verse 8, I will cleanse them from all their iniquity by which they have sinned against me, and I will pardon all of their iniquities by which they have sinned against me, by which they have transgressed against me. And it will be to me a name of joy, praise, and beauty before all the nations of the earth, which will hear of all the good that I do for them. And they will be in dread and tremble because of all the good and all the peace that I make for it. Wow. This is interesting. What year are we in again? This is a few months before Babylon's going to break through those walls. And that's it. It's done. Burning the city down. Here's God challenging Jeremiah to say, look, I'm going to take you further. I want to take you into the next steps, the part of redemption. God often challenges us to think one step ahead. Isn't that fascinating? Sometimes during sinful peace, when we're living in sin, but it's peaceful, God's challenging us to be thinking about what's coming next, the judgment. right? That's what's on our mind. Especially for the Christian. You can't live and you can't be sinning without God always making you think of, oh, there's judgment coming if you don't deal with this one, right? Sometimes during the times of judgment, like right here, he's telling us of this restoration and this beauty and this joy that's to come. It seems God's always trying to focus us on the future and what's coming because it's a walk of faith. That's what a relationship with God is like. It's a walk of faith, a day-by-day walk with God to follow his lead, expecting that he wants to take us into mighty things. What's mighty? Inaccessible things. He wants to bring us into things we don't even know that are coming. How many of you 20 years ago could have exactly predicted where you'd be at, right? I don't even know if any of us knew each other. Well, some of you, if you're family, maybe you knew each other 20 years ago, okay? But, I mean, we can't even predict 20 years ahead. Let alone the exhaustible, inaccessible things that God has planned for our future, right? He's got so much more planned. Verse 10, thus saith Yahweh, yet again there will be heard in this place of which you say that it is a waste without man or without beast, that is in the cities of Judah and in the streets of Jerusalem that are desolate without man and without inhabitant and without beast. There will be, in verse 11, the voice of joy and the voice of Dan. No, just kidding. The voice of joy and the voice of gladness. The voice of joy and the voice of gladness. The voice of the bridegroom and the voice of the bride. There we have weddings again. The voice of those who say, give thanks to Yahweh of hosts, for Yahweh is good, for his loving kindness endures forever. And of those who bring a thank offering into the house of Yahweh, for I will return the fortunes of the land as they were at the first, says Yahweh. In verse 12, thus saith Yahweh of hosts, there will again be in this place, which is waste without man, without beast, and in all the cities, an abode of shepherds who cause their flocks to lie down. And finally, verse 13, in the cities of the hill country, the cities of the valley or the Shephelah, and the cities of the Negev, which is the south, in the land of Benjamin and the surroundings of Jerusalem, and in the cities of Judah, the flocks will again pass under the hands of the one who numbers them. That, of course, would be their shepherd, says Yahweh. So God says that he would tell them mighty things. Well, he truly did. He's telling them inaccessible information here. How hard would it be for them to imagine all of these things are going to happen in a very, very short period of time, and yet it will? Oh, maybe they think they're coming back. Okay, yeah, God, okay, you said we're coming back in 70 years. I'll believe you. I don't even know how you're going to do that. But how many would believe that when they come back, there would be this great of a blessing? He's promising full restoration to a nation that's going to get wiped out and scattered. Let's use some context here. Usually when nations get wiped out and scattered, that's it. That's it. They don't even retain their national identity. They blend in with the culture where they go, and that's it. Okay, well, maybe God, you'll bring us back. But God's like, no, not only will I bring you back, you will be right back into your national identity, not just having weddings and offspring and reproduction and continuing the nation, but even doing the offerings. You'll have your national identity, your religious identity even, when I bring you back. There's joy of weddings and worshipers here. There's peace even to the isolated, to the shepherds. It's all coming back. That's the extent. I'm telling you, this would have been inaccessible to them. They would have been like, what, to that extent? Are you serious, God? It's going to be all of this again? And he's like, yeah, I'm telling you. I'm bringing you back. God made them the promise just a couple of chapters ago that he will never let the nation of Israel go extinct. No other people on the face of this earth has that promise but Israel. And now here comes another part of this inaccessible, mighty word that he wants to tell them. Something different he's going to perform now, starting in verse 14. Behold, days are coming, declares Yahweh, when I will establish or perform the good word which I have spoken concerning the house of Israel and the house of Judah. In those days, now we're talking about the end, and at that time I will cause a righteous branch of David to branch forth, and he shall do justice and righteousness in the earth. In those days Judah will be saved, and Jerusalem will dwell in security. And this is the name by which she will be called. The Lord is our righteousness. Wow. So this is another part of how he set up this chapter to say, I'm going to tell you amazing things, not just normal things. Now he's saying that he will perform or establish the third promise that was made to Abraham, the promise of bringing the Messiah. This descendant of David, this branch that comes out of David's lineage, the Messiah himself will come. And in the days of Israel's restoration, this branch that is the offspring of David will save and will bring security. Patient, again, they're on the siege is out there, right? Nobody has gone outside the city walls now for months, okay? Maybe they went out when the siege was lifted, maybe not. Nobody's gone out. In that situation, people are desperate, and God's like, I'm going to restore, I'm going to bless, I'm going to bring weddings again. It's just coming and coming, and they're like, there's some people that are like, God, is this the time for this? Is this really the time you want to tell me about all this good stuff? Because we got a problem out there. And he's just going over this amazingness of, he's going to bring the Messiah. And by the way, all of this talk here of in those days, we saw that language in chapter 30 and 31, the first half of this message. And we know he's referring to the time of the end, speaks specifically of the end of the 7-year tribulation that's coming soon. Verse 17, let's keep going. For thus saith Yahweh, David, and not David, but his descendant, David shall not have a man cut off from sitting on the throne of the house of Israel. But also in verse 18, the Levitical priests shall not have a man cut off from before me who is to offer burnt offerings, to offer up grain offerings in smoke, and to perform sacrifices continually. So this is very interesting because we often talk about the promise made that David's lineage will not be cut off, but yet there's another half to this. So there's an interesting combination here that we dealt with back in Jeremiah 22 and 23, in that it's promised in Jeremiah 22 that there's the son of David, who was the current king at that time, Jehoiachin, was told that this promised descendant, Jesus, would not come through his lineage. David's kingly lineage was cut off in Jeremiah 22 and said, there is no one of this man's, of Jeconiah's seed that will be a king. It's cut off. The Lord declared that. But then in the very next chapter, Jeremiah chapter 23, the Lord reaffirmed that this righteous branch would come through David. It would be a son of David. And now here we have the same thing again. We have this confirmation that the son of David, this branch of David would come. And everybody's like, okay, Lord, you've said this twice now. How can it be that there will be a son of David that will be the Messiah if you've already cut off the kingship in a spiritual sense? And we know the answer to that. Because the Lord doesn't bring Jesus through the kingly lineage. It comes down to Jesus' earthly father, Joseph, at all. God brings Jesus through David's other son, Nathan, and his lineage that we see recorded in Luke chapter 3, which ends in Jesus' actual earthly parent, Mary, because he was born of a virgin. And that is how Jesus is the son of David, through Mary and through David's son, Nathan, right? That's the way that works out. So, and then it's interesting because we often talk about this son of David that's going to come and how the kingship of David's family will never end. But verse 18 is the other half of this. He also promised that the Levitical priests shall not have a man cut off from before me to be able to offer. Well, wait a second. Are you telling me that there's going to be Levitical priests that are stood up in the future yet? Yes. Yes, I'm absolutely telling you that. Wait until we get into Ezekiel. When we get into Ezekiel, specifically Ezekiel chapter 43 and 44, talks about in the kingdom age for 1,000 years, the whole system of ritual sacrifice will be reinstituted for that 1,000-year period. Who's going to do the sacrifices? The Levitical priests. Two things. You say to yourself, well, what in the world? Why do we need to sacrifice again? No. I didn't say we need to sacrifice again. I said we're going to sacrifice again. We don't need it, but we're going to get it so that we can remember all over again and picture all of these intricate facets and details about what Jesus did for us. Just like Israel had the opportunity to look at all of these sacrifices for all these years and foreshadow what Christ was going to do, For 1,000 years in the millennium, we're going to have this in front of us, and we're going to watch this all over again to see every part of it and how each part of it represents something of Christ. We're going to see it face to face. And who's going to do it? The Levitical priests. As promised here, that they will always be Levitical priests to offer. And you say to yourself, well, wait a second, how do we know how the son of David, Jesus, came. We know he proved his birth and announcement through genealogy, through signs and wonders, through angelic visits, and all kinds of ways he authenticated that he's the true son of David. Well, how are we going to prove who the Levitical priests are? I got a really super spiritual term I'm going to teach you. DNA. Okay. DNA. So 1997, they discovered the methods to track DNA right down to the very family. Family origins now can be solved using DNA. I mean, this gave rise to, what's the me and you in 23 or something, whatever, and Ancestry.com and all these other ones. They all came out starting in the late 90s. You could read all kinds of news articles to this effect about how they have officially and finally been able to track two specific markers that dictate exactly who the Levitical priests are. I've got a couple of articles. I just read one little section of one of them. There's a really good article I recommend that you take a look at that is titled, this was in Israel 365 News. The title of the article is DNA Studies Trace Jewish Priestly Lineage from Biblical Times. Really good article. I'll leave that to you. The one I want to quote from right now is from the New York Times. And it's entitled Finding Genetic Traces of Jewish Priesthood. And I just want to read you just a tiny bit of this. It starts off and says, in an unusual marriage of science and religion, researchers have found biological evidence in support of an ancient belief. This is the New York Times, okay? An ancient belief, like it's something weird to believe the Bible. Certain Jewish men, thought to be descendants of the first high priest Aaron, the older brother of Moses, they share distinctive genetic traits, suggesting that there may indeed be actual proof that they are members of a single lineage that has endured for thousands of years. Just a little more here. The subjects of this current study were 188 Jewish men from Israel, North Africa, and England. The researchers did not rely on surnames to identify these priests, but instead they asked the men if they had been told that they were priests. 68 had, and the rest identified themselves as Israelites, a term used to describe lay people, men who said that they were Levites, and then it mistakenly says members of a different priesthood. That's not exactly right. They were omitted from this study. The researchers obtained Y chromosomes by extracting them from sample cells scraped from the men's mouths. They studied two sites or markers, known variable regions of DNA, to find out whether the priests and Israelites differed. They did. Only 1.5% of the priests, as opposed to 18.4% of the laymen, had the first marker. The other marker, which could appear in 5 different forms, tended to occur most often in one version of the priests. 54% of the priests had this version and 33% of the others had it. The simplest, straightforward explanation is that these men have the Y chromosome of Aaron. And it goes on to explain it all to you in metrics and numbers that you can all prove it out. But the bottom line is, since the Lord allowed us to discover DNA in the late 1990s and use it for practical purposes, we can clearly tell exactly not just who's Jewish, we can tell who's Levitical, who came from the literal family of the priests. And so you can go online, you can look up Israel Temple Institute, and you can find out that they've already got priests that are certified by their DNA. They've already started making a bunch of the implements, and they're ready to go. They want a temple so that they can begin to do all this. And now because of DNA, we know exactly how the Lord is going to be able to identify these priests and bring them back into service. And now let's just finish this off in verse 19. Then the word of Yahweh came to Jeremiah, saying, Thus saith Yahweh, if you can break my covenant for the day and my covenant for the night, so that day and night would not be in their appointed times, then my covenant may also be broken with David my servant, so that he will not have a son to reign on his throne, and with the Levitical priests, my ministers. In verse 22, as the host of heaven, that's the stars, cannot be counted, and the sand of the sea cannot be measured, so I will multiply the descendants of David my servant and the Levites who minister to me. So this is the same as God said in Jeremiah chapter 31 about Israel's national existence. And now it's spoken of specifically about David's lineage, and that there will be an eternal kingship through David's lineage, which of course is holy Jesus Christ. And also the Levitical priests will continue to minister. And so then we read we can get all the details of exactly which priests he's going to use. We know DNA will help us find the priests, but Exodus chapter 44 has already found them for us, because it tells us it's going to be the sons of the priest Zadok that will be the ones that come back, and they're the ones that minister in the book of Ezekiel we read. So we know exactly which family that the Lord's going to use, because he's already told us. Let's finish this. Verse 23. And the word of Yahweh came to Jeremiah, saying, have you not seen what this people have spoken, saying, the two families which Yahweh chose, he has rejected? Now, which two families is he talking about? The family of David and the family of Aaron, the priest. But people are saying, oh, no, we're cast off. Okay. He has rejected them. Thus they have spurned my people from being a nation any longer in their sight. Thus saith Yahweh in verse 25, if my covenant for day and night did not stand, and the statutes of heaven and earth have not established, then I would reject the seed of Jacob, again, that's Israel, and David my servant, not taking from his seed rulers over the seed of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. But I will return their fortunes, and I will have compassion on them. And so, though the New Testament extends far beyond Israel alone, he will in no wise cast off Israel. That's the promise here. Israel will continue to endure. Yes, the new covenant allows for all believers to be a royal priesthood. We read this in the book of Peter, that we're all royal priesthoods, royal priests in the kingdom of the new covenant. But so will Israel. So will Israel endure. And that's the specific promise as this chapter ends. That Israel themselves as a nation, David's family, the Levitical family, they will endure forever. I know this is kind of lengthy, but I just want to read this to you. It's kind of something that we've been alluding to the whole time through these 4 chapters, but never have read it yet. And this is what's going to finish us off today. It's Romans chapter 11. It's talking about all Israel being saved in the last days. And it just says, I said then, has God rejected his people? This is Paul writing to the Romans. May it never be. For I, too, am an Israeli. I am the seed of Abraham. I'm of the tribe of Benjamin. God has not rejected his people, whom he foreknew. I say then, did they stumble so that they would fall? God forbid, or may it never be. But by their transgression, salvation has come to the Gentiles, to make Israel jealous. Now, if their transgression is the riches of the whole world, and their failure is riches for the Gentiles, well, how much more will their fullness be? Now, the end of that, he's saying, look, if when Israel rejected God, the gospel came to the entire world, if that was a good thing, he's saying it'll be even better when Israel comes back in and Israel gets saved in the end. So let's not forget the main point of application of these chapters of Jeremiah. It is the nation of Israel that will be saved and will come to him in the end. So don't lose sight of that. So how Israel was to wait in faith, waiting for this restoration to come, it's the same way that we should wait in faith, expecting that the Lord will do his part. So look at that. It's just the first point. We wait and with public faith, with publicly active faith. The Lord is going to call us all to live for him while we wait. James shows us that we should show our faith by our works. That's the way James describes it, right? We don't affect others by our announcements. We affect them by our accomplishments. So let's be careful to do that, just like Jeremiah had to publicly show his faith. And then secondly, even though it's foggy and we don't understand, we need to have obedient faith. Faith by definition is not 100% evidence. Have you thought about that? By definition, faith says, I don't know 100% that this is exactly going to work exactly this way. By definition, it says, I have reasons to believe I should do this, but I don't have 100% evidence. So if you believe that God is so much greater than us, then you'll do it. You'll do it. You come to trust him and you act on these reasons. And then third and finally, we wait with this expectant hope. Our faith believes that God will have his perfect way in the end. He will. We believe it, right? That's what we do as the church. We believe all of the things he said he's going to do, he will do. And all we have to do is simply wait and believe we are on the winning team. He will accomplish his good will.
You've been listening to Believe in the Word with Pastor Dan Shunk. God's covenant with his people is unbreakable because it's rooted in his Son. The righteous branch still reigns, offering grace to the weary and peace to the repentant. His promises are as sure today as the sunrise. To hear this message again or share it with a friend, visit cchambersburg.org. While you are there, click on the Media and Radio tab to access our full archive of teachings, or download our Calvary Chapel Chambersburg app for easy access to sermons wherever you are. And if you're in the Chambersburg, Pennsylvania area, we'd love for you to come worship and fellowship with us at our location. We are located at 5121 Coffee Avenue, Chambersburg, Pennsylvania, 17201. Thank you for joining us today. We look forward to have you join us next time as we continue our study through Jeremiah. This has been Believe in the Word with Pastor Dan Shunk.